Hey everyone, and welcome back to SkillCap's UI 0 to Hero Challenge. In this series, I'm going to be using SkillCap's one-click UI along with the courses on their site to help me climb all the way to 3K rating this season on a class that I have never played. In last week's episode, we left off with our little rep paladin making it just shy of 1K rating. We picked up a tier piece from our week 1 vault, so we certainly hit the ground running, and now that it's the second week of the season, it opens up a lot of opportunities for us. We've got a lot of goals this week. The first is that I would like to hit 2K rating. At 2K rating, we gain access to an additional catalyst charge, which we can use to help us potentially get our 4-set this week. Red's 4-set seems to be pretty impactful, so that's going to be a major milestone for us in this series. The second thing that I need to make sure to accomplish this week is that we've got our second spark available to us for crafting. I held off on crafting the first week so that I could craft a 2-hander this week. It just tends to be a little bit more efficient with Gilded Crest, since it uses 2 sparks but only 60 gilded to upgrade a weapon to 720 item level. Our weapon is going to be a massive spike in our damage, so I really want to make sure that I get this done this week. And finally, I would really love to complete a 10 this week to give myself a sweet myth track piece of loot in my vault. I think these are some pretty reasonable goals. I'm not trying to go too extreme in this challenge, since I know a lot of you guys watching maybe don't have too much time to grind out 8 10s every single week. So let's just keep things simple and try to see how high we can climb doing that. First thing is first though, probably the most exciting part of this week, it's time to open our vault. Last week we didn't do anything crazy, but we should have a few hero track pieces available for us to choose from. Let's take a listen in on my thought process though. There's a chest piece, ring, no tier, legs or anything. We may be looking at this ring right here with speed. That's pretty cool. Veteran chest isn't very ideal. This one's a trinket. Cursed idol stone. Channel for 1 second to invoke the wrath. I think this is actually a pretty good trinket for us though. Honestly, this trinket isn't bad at all. It's kind of annoying that it has a cast time, but honestly, it's a major upgrade from our Ascendancy trinket previously. All right, naturally what we want to do with anything. Take our sim link here. Yeah, I'm going to go sim that. And of course, the trinket is coming out on top. I think that this is nice too, because then I can actually get rid of my imperfect ascendancy serum. This trinket is just annoying to use and I don't really want it. I think this other one is just as annoying to use, unfortunately, but if it's better, it's better, you know, so you can't really argue with that. I do like the speed on that one, but if it were something like leech or avoidance, I think I like it a little bit more. I don't really feel like I'm too slow or anything. So I'll take this one, and this will be our new trinket. Next thing we've got to take care of is, while I didn't really plan to do the normal raid just because this isn't really a raiding series, we would really like to get our 4-set this week if possible. A couple of new bosses just became available in the raid finder this week, so I'm going to slam those real fast and just see if I can get myself any loot. And then while we wait in queue for raid finders, I also went ahead and checked out SkillCap's Rep Paladin course over on their website, as well as their Melee Fundamentals course. Alright, so SkillCap definitely delivered on the rec course, which is super sick. Also, just from my experience using SkillCap's courses in the past, they always seem to tell me something new that I didn't even think about. So I'm really hoping that they can hit me with something that's a bit more advanced here in this course that I just have no idea about. Generally, when I'm learning a new class, I like to dabble with it a little bit on my own before I look up any specifics. I find it very fun to just experiment with the class yourself to figure out how it works before really needing to optimize things. That being said, I think I'm ready to hear all of the things that I'm doing wrong, so I'm hoping they can give me a little bit of insight into how to min-max some stuff. For starters, one thing that I really want to learn is what is up with me having all these random empty GCDs. I feel like sometimes there's just nothing for me to cast, and that's never really a great feeling. Intuitively, if I were to guess, I think it's because I'm not using my builders or spenders efficiently, which is causing me to waste holy power, but that is just a straight up guess. It's really interesting learning that the rotation isn't super hard, but there's still some nuance to it that I can min-max for fun. For example, I realize some of my GCD issues are coming from the fact that I'm just overusing my builders and capping on holy power, but apparently I also have a lot of passive holy power generation that I'm throwing in the trash constantly. They set me up with some cool ways to track my passive generation, and then another thing that they pointed out is that apparently Divine Storm also has a frontal effect attached to it. I had no idea this existed, and to be honest, this effect is just so over the top that I didn't see the frontal. I just saw the giant storm pop up around me every time I pressed it. This has made me realize how bad my positioning actually is sometimes, since I'm hardly ever thinking about aiming this at all. I'm just kind of ripping my abilities. Again, I know a lot of people say that Rep Paladin is easy, but I do still feel like there is a very clear difference between a really good Rep Paladin I've seen and just an average Rep Paladin or Raid Finder. So understanding the nuance of the spec like this is super important if I'm going to try to hit 3K this season. While watching these courses, I finished up my Raid Finder, and unfortunately this week we didn't get any tier. Luckily, because we got a tier piece in our vault week 1, this does mean that I'm free to use a catalyst charge on something this week to get my 2 set, and then next week we'll be able to get an additional catalyst charge, meaning that at 2k rating we will be able to get our 4 set. So it's not all bad. I'm still going to be waiting for my hero track piece to do that, but that is something that definitely could happen this week. And with all of our chores out of the way, I'm actually free to hop into a key. Now from our vault, we got a 6 floodgate. Something I try to do when assembling a group is I consider what comp we're putting together. Even if it's just a 6, I find that I have more fun in the game when the classes in the group benefit me. You could also argue that it gives us a better chance of timing the key, but to be honest, player skill is really all that matters, and it feels like people can perform well on any class. I'm just selfish, and I like doing a lot of damage. Right away, we had a Brewmaster and a Warrior sign up. This is cool because Brew gives a physical damage buff and Warrior gives me Battle Shout. And then we got a Havoc Demon Hunter for the 3% damage increase. And finally, we have a Shaman for the Sky Fury buff. I later on realized that Rhett does like 0 physical damage, so the Monk buff doesn't really seem to be that great for me. But hey, whatever. That's the whole point of the series, to learn things. We started out this dungeon super strong after watching the guides on SkillCap, and I actually topped the meters on the first pull. Now, one of the things that I'm loving about Paladin is that anytime things get hectic, I can just bubble and ignore all of the mechanics. This first pull was a nightmare with 4 melee, and we basically just ended up with saw blades everywhere, so I bubbled almost immediately. I actually could have maybe even done more damage, but I forgot to pop my trinket, which we'll find is going to be a common habit in this series. Things went pretty well for the most part in this dungeon though. I was getting a little schooled by the Havoc Demon Hunter on most bosses, but for the most part, I felt like I carried my weight. I ended up being 3rd on overall, but I've still got to craft my weapon and get some tier pieces, so I'm really not expecting to pop off yet. Luckily, we did pick up a little temporary 2-hander here from this key to tide us over while we wait to collect a few more Gilded Crests, which is nice. Once again, I do feel like when the keys go well, I'm really not making use of my utility enough. While I did experience some open GCDs still, I feel like I could be filling those with things like Hand of Sacks, Freedoms, or Lay on Hands even. But unless we're feeling pressured, honestly, I just don't really think about it much. Maybe that's a good thing, but it does make it a little bit hard to practice for when the time comes. Afterwards, our key got upgraded to a Priory 8. For this key, I decided to take an Ellie Shaman instead of a Resto. My main is an Ellie Shaman, and I know that they can really crank, so I have a weak spot for them. We also picked up an Outlaw Rogue. Honestly, maybe not the best grab. That being said, it's just an 8, so it shouldn't really matter too much. We picked up a Blood DK for grips on the Sharpshooters in the first area, and then finally a Disc Priest to round out the comp. A little bit different group compared to the last one, but I think it's probably fine for this dungeon. Now, this key went mostly fine. We had a few deaths, but nothing too bad. Something I did notice during this key is that I could be a little bit more helpful with the light spawns in the last room. I think part of learning to use my off healing or externals better is going to come down to understanding the parts of the dungeon where those things can actually be a bit more useful. I noticed that because my UI highlights those who are being targeted by the light spawns, it's actually pretty easy for me to just look and use sack on them in these moments. And now, after noticing this, I'm definitely going to be more conscious about that when I go into this area in the future. Finishing up this dungeon gave us a +9 gambit. And let me tell you, when I say I waited in queue for a while for this key, I mean I waited in queue for a while. To kill time while I waited, I ran a few world quests, but I began to just think that people likely aren't looking to run 9s. Either you're trying to run a 10 for a weekly vault, or you're trying to run a 7 for easy gilded or hero year. 9 is just like a weird point where it's harder for hardly any reason, which really sucks because I would love to boost this key to a 10 as soon as possible. Eventually, I just dropped it down to an 8 to see if I would get any better luck, and while it still took a while, eventually we were able to get a group together. Now, I was really excited to run this key because it was one of the 3 keys that I still hadn't done yet, so this should be a massive rating gain to help us get to 2k if we can time it. Now, Gambit features one of the most horrifying first pulls I think of any dungeon I've ever ran, maybe ever. It spawns you into this area with just a billion Murlocs and a giant, and for some reason, every single tank likes to pull every single pack around you out the gate. You really don't need to pull every single pack, but most of the tanks just do it anyway. And this pull went not great for our group. Ooh. To be honest, our damage was a bit low. I'm sure I could have done more to help out, but when there's 200 mobs on my screen, all my brain can help to do is think, Divine Storm, Divine Storm, Divine Storm, like the true rep paladin that I'm becoming. Now, one nice thing about these keys is that even though it is a little bit of a struggle bus, it does give us a good chance to try and flex our chops a bit. I was trying to make sure I was kicking stuff on cooldown and using my blinding light to stop casts. It really does feel like there's infinite ways I could be helping my party on Rhett, so it's actually a little bit fun when things are chaotic like this, because I feel like I could be the difference in us timing the key or not. Unfortunately, this key ended up coming to a close in the last room. We kept wiping on the Ritualist casting their raid wipe ability. The last straw was when I overlapped my kick with one of our party members' stops, basically making it so I just had to watch as the enemy's cast went off. I was really trying hard to complete this key, but there's just only so much that you can do. Luckily, thanks to SkillCap's UI, looking back on this clip, I can actually confirm a few things. For starters, if we look down at the Luxthos weak aura pack, we can see that my Blinding Light, Hammer of Justice, and Kick are all on cooldown. So there's literally nothing I could have done for this cast beyond obviously using my resources a little bit more efficiently earlier. Also, if we look up at the top, we can see that our party actually had 3 kicks available for this cast, which I'm not saying to like bash our party or anything. As mom always said, sometimes you break keys. But it's actually reassuring for me to be able to look and see that like I'm not crazy. People just weren't kicking things in this dungeon, and I think I played okay. In the future, I would want to be more careful with my stops and save them for moments like this if I'm in a group that doesn't like to kick. But you just can't time all your keys. Shortly after this wipe, we voted to abandon. I still wanted to time this key though, so we ran it back on a 7 with a different group, getting a sweet +2 and conveniently bumping this up to a 9 streets, yet another dungeon that I needed to hit for 2k. We completed this one in pretty good fashion, which secured us a 10 key for the week, and that means that as long as we can complete it, we can get ourselves a myth track piece in our vault next week. Now for this group, we got a pretty weird comp. Feral, Havoc, Prot Warrior, and Resto Shaman. I imagine this was going to be a pretty big step up in difficulty for us, but luckily it was a dungeon that I'm super familiar with from last season. It's really interesting that when you're playing a new role though, you start to notice things that you maybe didn't before. For example, we had a lot of deaths early, and I think that I could have prevented some of these by using my Blessing of Freedom to clear roots from the architects in these first few packs. I also could have helped out a bit more with the surveyors. My kick seems to be pretty short ranged, but I could also make use of my stun to get them off of people when needed. I get so locked in on Divine Storming that I forget at times what is really going to help us time that key is helping everyone stay alive. We made our way to Big Mama, which I know can be a pretty frightening tank boss at times, so I was trying to keep an eye on our tank's defensives, but honestly this guy I guess just didn't need them at all. I don't know, I guess he just never felt in danger, so I didn't use it. I probably could have used it on DPS during the burn phase in the future, but again, that's why looking back on this stuff is nice. I do redeem myself a little bit on Swamp Face, trying to help out our Feral Druid. I know this fight can be a little bit scary for healers, so I wanted to play my part in making it easier. And how does my tank repay me for this? That's right, by assassinating me mid-fight. I swear, you can't trust anyone in this world. We didn't end up timing this key, but I felt like I really shined on the last boss. I got some good sacks off. I ripped 2 battle reses, one on our tank even when he died. And I even finally remembered to use my lay on hands for once. Honestly, climbing up to a 10 finally really made me feel like I was taking advantage of my kit a bit more, and I'm super excited to see how things will look next week with a bit more practice. We wrapped up this week getting ourselves a bit more rating by running this 9 Priory where I had a rather embarrassing mess up, and then pugging a 7 Arakara to push our rating officially above 2k, earning us our additional Catalyst charge and giving us Gilded Crest that we need to craft our 720 item level 2-hander, leaving us in an excellent place to log off for the week. All in all, a really awesome week, and I am excited to see what we get in our vault in week 3. Again, if you guys are enjoying this series, be sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along, and if you also want to get access to SkillCap's one-click UI, then be sure to check it out using the link below. As a player who has spent dozens of hours tweaking my UI over the last year or two, I've got to say that SkillCap's UI is growing on me more and more every dungeon. It is everything that I could possibly need to perform well in Mythic Plus, and what is even better is that it is fully customizable, so that anything I don't like about it, I can easily change in just a few seconds. If you've really been looking to up your game this season, I highly recommend checking it out, and other than that, I will see you in the next video.